Corporal Malin stood in a muddy trench, firing at ghosts. He and his surviving men sprayed las blasts at the blurs of light and colour rushing closer across no man's land. If they hit anything, he saw no sign of it. The enemy were almost upon them, but soon it wouldn't matter. Malin stole a glance over his shoulder. He saw Colonel Drask and the surviving commanders of the Mordian 10th 100 yards to the rear, waiting on the landing pad. Above them, descending as fast as its pilots dared, an Aquila lander came to snatch them away to safety. Malins and his men had only to stave off the Xenos until Drask was extracted, and then they could go to meet the Emperor with their heads held high. A sudden hail of enemy fire pulled his attention back to the fore. Trooper Gaffin began to scream, the sound ever more shrill and panicked. He convulsed, his flesh flushing crimson, veins standing out like ropes, and Malins had just enough time to dive clear before Gaffin exploded like a human bomb. Shaking, pasted in gore, Malins rose to see a ghoulish figure perched on a nearby ruin. It wore skeletal armor and a flowing greatcoat, and held the long-barreled cannon that had slain Gaffin. Malins raised his gun to fire, but before he could pull the trigger, the figure adjusted its aim and let fly again. The shots whispered over the trench, and Malins span in time to see them shatter the lander's canopy. Seconds later, blood sprayed the inside of the armor-glass cockpit, and the lander plunged. Colonel Drask and his retinue vanished in a roaring fireball as their extraction shuttle, the means of their salvation, instead became the instrument of their deaths. Numb, shaking, Malins looked back in time to see the skeletal figure give a mocking bow before it leveled its cannon toward him and fired again. Welcome, gentle listener. I am Voldemort, your faithful servant, and I wish to introduce you to the important factions, forces, and units of the Warhammer 40k universe, the grim darkness of the far future, where there is no time for peace, there is only time for war. And if you are a regular gentle listener, then I would ask that you check that you are still subscribed and have notifications on. If not, then do consider subscribing, as then you will not miss out on ongoing narratives, if that sort of thing appeals to you. What a wonderful opening tale, straight from the 8th edition Harlequins Codex. If it ain't broke, as they say, don't fix it. And today, we are to discuss one of the most dangerous categories of warrior in the entire setting. Lithe and deadly, they call war an art form and are virtuoso at its performance. Of course, I can only be speaking of the Death Jesters, of the Harlequins. And so, as usual, for the very basics, let us lean on existing wisdom. To quote, Death Jesters. The arrival of a Death Jester upon the battlefield is announced by a hissing storm of shrieker cannon fire. Enemy infantry are torn apart in sprays of blood and scalded flesh, as the weapon's gene toxins cause them to combust horrifically from within. Such an entrance is apt indeed, for the sinister Death Jesters play the role of death in Harlequin's performances. Without exception, Death Jesters possess a grisly sense of humor that leads them to seek new and inventive ways to terrorize, torment, and eventually kill their victims. They can sometimes be heard chuckling or humming softly in the midst of battle, and will occasionally pause to sketch a deep bow or offer mocking applause to foes whose terrible fates have especially entertained them. Killing the foe is not enough for a Death Jester. To make war worthwhile, they must intersperse murder with ironic humor, slaying an officer at the crescendo of a rallying speech so that all his efforts are reversed, panicking sappers so they flee into their own freshly laid minefield, or wounding a heavy weapons trooper so that their shot flies wide and destroys the very objective they were defending. These are the kinds of cruel deed in which Death Jesters find their amusement. Indeed, there are few in the galaxy as talented or imaginative when it comes to writing the tragic comedy of war, and few more vehemently hated by their enemies. Amid the masks, Death Jesters move as they will, garbed in armor said to incorporate the bones of their predecessors. They are regarded with wary amusement by their fellows, for they are as morbid and unpredictable as they are gifted. Yet their dedication to the laughing god is beyond question. And in the heat of battle, the covering fire of the Death Jesters saves the lives of their comrades time and time again. Death Jesters are armed with a holosuit, shrieky cannon, and a flip belt. Holosuit. In place of the thick armored plates used by less advanced races, all Eldar warriors use psychically activated bodysuits. In battle, the trademark holosuit, or Deathedi, meaning between colors, transforms the Harlequins into dazzling blurs, their outlines exploding into blizzards of light that leave their foes' aim confounded and their thoughts bewildered. The device incorporates a programmable holofield that breaks down the wearer's profile into a fractal light storm as they move. The faster they travel, the more pronounced the effect. So it is that a charging Harlequin appears as nothing more than an indistinct plasmatic storm that is nigh on impossible to hit, allowing them to simply avoid blows that would otherwise lay them low. Flip belt. The flip belt is a wonder of Eldar technology, a portable anti-grav generator keyed to trigger upon the mental command of its wearer. So incredibly lightweight are flip belts that they do nothing to hamper their wearer's natural agility. Instead, they heighten it to the point that Harlequins can leap clean over all but the most towering obstacles, springing and bounding through rubble and wreckage with supernatural ease. Shrieker cannon. Infinitely more cruel than a typical shuriken cannon, the shuriken cannons of the Death Jesters fire projectiles impregnated with virulent genetic toxins, which turn the luckless victim into a walking bomb. Their blood boils, organs rupture, and flesh sears from within, before they explode with sickening violence. End quote. Now the Death Jester has always been a thing of wonder to me, for they are brutal, precise, and exacting foes. It is the juxtaposition of the cruel warrior against the heart-rending emotional beings that the Eldar are, against their very nature, despite it, some might say. For none can feel the depths of misery nor the heights of exaltation as can an Eldar. Yet here we see in the Death Jester a part of them that is not often acknowledged, at least not in the craft worlds. Yet it is almost universally found amongst the denizens of the dread dark city of Komorrah, where the Eredith and Nis dwell, the Dark Eldar. For as we have heard, even in the midst of the confusing and terrifying battlefields of the grim darkness of the far future, these beings still make time for fun. They've been listening. Even when the bolter shots are speeding only millimeters past their heads, they still have the center, the insight, and the target identification skills to be almost totally at ease. So much so that they can take cold shots at targets to gain the maximum mirth. Now that, more than anything else, shows you the dark muse that moves these beings. For my part, I like to think that the Death Jesters were created later than some of the other positions in a mask, for their spirit, intent, and activity is far more akin to that of the Dark Eldar, even if I may not be correct about their origins. I feel that they would have been developed over years, as more of the Dark Kin joined the soldiers of the laughing god, Segara. And as the Ranadandra, the final battle, creeps ever closer, the entire fate of the galaxy may well rest in the hands of the Harlequins, the Masks, and inevitably, the Death Jesters. Let us hope that when the last battle plays out, that the Jesters retain their center, their goal, and do indeed tip the balance in the favor of their own people, and resist the urge to perform just one last fatal jape that will end in the death of their people, the elevation of Slaanesh, and the victory of Chaos entire. We can but hope that when the last laugh happens, that it is not from a Death Jester, but comes from their master, Segara, the laughing god. no matter what you do today, do try to make some time for fun. Toodaloo.